Hello and welcome to my morning note. Let's take a deep dive into the world of water today. Might surprise you to learn that the world water industry is worth more than $300 billion. And although we hear a lot about other commodities such as copper or gold these days, water is a crucial commodity which is very unequally divided around the world and for which demand is growing very quickly. It could be a serious problem that might also create some economic opportunities to go with the economic problems. Now, Goldman Sachs have recently produced a big report on this subject. With me now to discuss this, over the line from New York, is Goldman's legendary equity analyst, Cohen. Let me start by asking, what is the problem with water distribution at the moment? It is very deep, very unequally distributed. How can we get water to where it's needed?
John, it's a question of the children's rhyme, water, water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. So let's start with the following. Our planet has enormous water resources, but only 2.5% of that water is not salt water. So only 2.5% is fresh water. And of the fresh water, it is very unevenly distributed. There are some nations like Canada and the United States that have a great deal of water and a huge amount of water per capita, yet there are other nations that may have water but perhaps not enough for their population. Among the nations that are really water constrained are the ones that we think about, including those in the Middle East that are so arid, but we also think there are problems developing in China and India. Very large populations, and the amount of water they have available per person is actually quite small.
And not only that, but their demand for water, as I understand it, as their economies grow, is also growing very fast at the margin, right?
Absolutely. Over the last 5 years or so, about 30% of the increase in global water use has come from India. And part of this is industrial, but part of it too is as nations become a little wealthier and the middle class grows, people expect to eat better. And what we do see is that as protein gets added to diet, and protein of course is so essential for good health, protein takes a lot more water. And the type of protein matters too. Beef, for example, takes 4 times as much water as does poultry or pork.
That sounds as though we could be talking about quite a serious physical constraint on growth on 2 countries which the rest of the world really is relying on for growth. Is that being unduly alarmist, or is there a problem here?
We think it is something that certainly bears watching. We don't want to be alarmist at this point because clearly this is something that has taken years to develop and there may still be opportunities to work our way out. But we do see some constraints right now. So for example, the northern provinces of China, which are drought prone anyway, also have an enormous problem because the industrialization of that area has led to significant pollution. At this point, just about 20% of the water in the northern provinces can be used for drinking or for agricultural purposes. And the following number is even more startling. About half the water in the northern provinces of China is not clean enough to be used for industrial purposes because it corrodes the equipment. This is a very significant problem and something that could have an impact on growth, if not for all of China, certainly for some regions.
How might one actually make money out of trying to deal with this obviously very important problem?
You know, John, in the past, providing good, clean water has typically been viewed as a governmental function. But what we've seen over the last couple of decades is that there has been significant development of technology, some of it on the private sector. It started in nations that were the most water constrained. For example, Israel has among the most technologically advanced ways to use water for irrigation purposes. And they also reclaim about 80% of wastewater, which is then used for agriculture as well. Throughout the rest of the world, there are some opportunities, and it's not just the water utilities. We think it really is the water technologies, desalinization, water cleanup, and effective use for irrigation. One other point, and that is there are some nations with ample water supplies, including Canada and the United States, and what we see is an export of what we call virtual water. The United States is the world's largest exporter of agricultural product, and in so doing, this country is in fact exporting water to other nations that need it.
Abby, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for sticking with us in extremely trying technological circumstances. I think very briefly in summary, people take a look at metals, they take a look at gold. Perhaps we should look at a much more basic commodity, and worry about water.